The Merrows song. We journey to the very west of Ireland, where the land gives way to the vast Atlantic, and where the veil between our world and the otherworldly sometimes thins enough for us to glimpse what lies beneath. In a place of rugged beauty, a small fishing village nestled amongst the crags of Connemara, near Ireland's only fjord. The cottages stout and low, huddled against the incessant wind, their chimneys exhaling plumes of turf smoke that mingle with the sea spray. Here, life is tethered to the rhythm of the ocean, its bounties, its mysteries. Liam, a fisherman like his father before him, and his father before that. Liam was a quiet soul, his hands rough from fishing nets and ropes, his eyes constantly squinting from the glare of the seas on a fine day. He knew the sea, or so he thought. He knew its moods, its dangers, its generous spirit, and its cold indifference. But Liam, a man of the waves, was not prepared for the true depths of its mysteries. It was late in autumn, the kind where the sun is setting on the horizon and the cold air is moving in. The wind carries the scent of peat fires and the distant rain. Liam had been out later than usual, drawn by a promising shoal of mackerel. As darkness began to truly descend, painting the choppy waters in shades of inky black, a strange sound drifted across the waves. It wasn't the cry of a seagull nor the groan of a curragh against the swell. It was a song, nothing like Liam had ever heard, haunting yet undeniably beautiful. It was a melody that seemed to pull on the very marrow of his bones, a sound that spoke of ancient sorrows and unimaginable wonders. Curiosity is a dangerous companion on the open sea, but he urged his small boat closer. He rowed slowly, deliberately towards the source of the bewitching sound. The wind seemed to quiet, the waves to soften, as if the ocean itself had held its breath to listen. As Liam searched the horizon for the source of the song, he spotted something, a woman. She sat on a low, dark skerry, a rock barely breaching the surface, slick with seaweed. Her back was to Liam, her hair the colour of oil on water flowed down her back, shimmering in otherworldly shine. Her skin, pale as the foam of Atlantic waves, seemed to glow in the deepening twilight. And then, as she turned her head ever so slightly, catching the last of the daylight, Liam saw it. Her eyes a deep fathomless green, like the ocean at its most mysterious, and a smile captivating yet holding a hint of something wild and untamed. It was then, as she shifted, that he saw the truth of her. Not legs, but a tail. Long, powerful, scaled in shades of emerald and sapphire. A Merrow, the Irish mermaid, or rather, the Irish sea fairy. She wasn't beautiful in the same way as the local women. She possessed a timeless grace. Her appearance looked to be forged in the deep ocean, spoke of cold depths, of crushing pressures, of a world utterly alien to Liam. And her song, it filled the air, a silent beckoning, a promise of wonders, and perhaps a profound loneliness could be heard in her voice. Liam's heart was pounding in his chest. Every instinct screamed at him to turn his boat, to flee the encounter. But he was held, captivated by the song, by the gaze of those deep green eyes. He felt a pull, a yearning, to abandon his boat, to dive into the black water, to follow her to whatever sunless kingdom lay beneath. He reached out a hand, almost without thinking, as if to touch the melody itself, and in that moment something changed. Perhaps the Merrow sensed his fear, or his humanity, or the fragile boundary he dared to cross. Her smile softened to an indescribable, sorrowful depth. Her eyes, which moments before had held the captivating, fathomless green of a stormy sea, clouded over with the cold, dark, deep, haunting black. It seemed as if her sorrow was not for herself, but for the inherent, devastating incompatibility between the human world and the otherworldly. With a gentle movement of her powerful tail, she slipped from the rock into the dark water of the sea, not with a splash, but with a graceful, fluid descent. The water seemed to embrace her, swallowing her whole. The shimmering scales vanished. The dark hair dissolved down into the gloomy depths of the Atlantic. The song, it lingered for a moment, a faint echo in the vast silence, and then too it was gone. Liam sat there in his boat, adrift, his oars forgotten. The cold reality of the night returned. The wind picked up, sharper now. The waves crashed against the hull with renewed vigour. He was alone again, utterly and profoundly alone on the open sea. He finally found the strength to grasp his oars, pulling his curragh back toward the faint, welcoming light of the village. But as he rowed, he realized something terrifying had been left behind. Something had been taken from him. The silence within him. Before, the sea had been a place of sounds he understood. The rattle of rigging, the slap of water on the hull, the cry of the wind. Now those sounds were dull, background noises. What remained echoing in the hollow chambers of his mind was the Merrow's melody. It played on a loop, a continuous crystalline note that superseded every other thought. It wasn't loud, but it was relentless. It stole his focus. It stole his peace. It spoke of vastness, of the cold and a dark, terrible liberty that lay beneath the surface. Liam returned to his cottage. His wife Marie noticed the change immediately. His eyes, usually crinkled at the corners from the sun and smile, were now shadowed, staring past her at some distant, unseen point. He barely ate. He only spoke in short, clipped sentences. He avoided the firelight, preferred to sit by the window, gazing out into the inky black ocean. For weeks the song was his secret torment. He went out fishing, not for the catch, but to be near the sound source, desperately hoping the ocean would drown the inner melody, or perhaps the Merrow would return and finish whatever spell she had begun. His hands, once skilled with the nets, grew clumsy. He would drop the ropes, forget his heading, or stare at a patch of water for an hour, convinced he could see a shimmering tail just beneath the waves. His fellow fishermen began to avoid him, muttering about him, seasickness, or too much trouble on the mind. One morning, nearly a month after the encounter, Liam woke with a start. The internal song was gone, utterly, completely gone. A profound, blessed silence had fallen on his head. He had felt lighter, as if a great cold weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He smiled at Marie, ate a hearty breakfast, and felt the old familiar pull of a day's work. Liam was back. He whispered a simple tune as he headed down to the harbour, but as he looked at his boat, moored alongside the rest, he noticed a crowd had gathered, hushed and grim. His neighbour Old Tig, a man who had fished these waters for 70 years, stood pale-faced, pointing. Liam, Tig whispered, his voice trembling like a reed in the wind. Your currach. Look at your currach. Liam stepped forward, his heart beginning to pound again, not with the Merrows fever, but with a sudden icy dread. The boat was sound, the rigging was tied and safe, but woven, tangled and lashed the bowsprit, as if tied there with immense care, was something that did not belong. It was a small, crudely fashioned net, woven not from hemp nor twine, but from strands of human hair, long, dark, oily and shimmering, still faintly damp from sea water. And in the centre of the woven hair, caught like a fish, was a single, tiny, white object. A button, the kind used on the collar of a child's nightshirt. Liam knew the button. It was the button from the nightshirt of Seamus, the son of his neighbour, Tig. Seamus, who had vanished from the pier the night before, in the dead of the darkest tide. The Merrow had not simply departed in sorrow. Liam realised now with a gut-wrenching certainty that the silent beckoning had been answered. She had taken something from the human world which seemed to replace the peace of his soul she had captured on the night of his encounter. And the gift Liam now received, the cold silence in his head, a silence gained through the loss of a child's life, confirmed by the personal message left for Liam on his currach. He never spoke of this encounter, not to his wife nor his children nor to his fellow fishermen. What could he say? That he had seen the creature of myth, that he had heard the song that stole his soul. They would have shaken their heads and seen him as a fool. But sometimes, when the Atlantic howls its wildest, when the storms lash the coast, Liam would sit by his fire, gazing into the flames, and he would remember the cold, captivating beauty of her face, the sorrow in her green eyes, and the haunting siren-like song that even now whispered just at the edges of his memory, a melody from the deep, reminding him of the boundless mysteries that still lie hidden just beyond our sight, a connection to the other world.